common missteps that you've seen people make at festivals like this?
Not bringing a tablecloth. Um, and then they have a totally naked table and they feel really embarrassed about it.
Why don't you guys introduce yourselves, tell us what your role is, and kind of give us a little spiel on what the Boston Festival of Indie Games is.
Sure. Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'll jump in here. So my name is Caroline Murphy, and I am the CEO of Boston FIG. My role involves cat herding and fundraising mostly.
I'm Veronica Keddy. I am the Director of Logistics this year for Boston FIG. And along with cat herding, I am doing a lot of the behind the scenes organizing. So if there's a sign that needs to be made, a program that needs to be printed, a t-shirt, stanchions, site and facilities, after party, all the little things that actually go into the day of setup and take down, that's what I help handle.
Great. So how did you guys become involved with the Boston FIG? I know there's a little bit of a rolling membership of the people that are leading the Boston FIG and setting it up. Kind of changes from year to year. So I'm wondering how you got involved and how you came to be involved in the role that you're in.
Sure. So I'm one of the festival founders.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's how I got. So back in, 5 years ago, a little more than 5 years ago now, we had the idea, I run Boston Indies, which is a game development and design meetup group. And at that time, there was kind of some pushback in the indie scene about current festivals. People felt like they were cost prohibitive and that the judging practices weren't necessarily like something that they really liked. And so we said, well, why don't we just do it like Boston style and then like affordable and then everyone will have fun. It'll be so great. So we set out to kind of like change things. And at first we were in MIT classrooms. And we were expecting 200 people and we got like 1,000. So we said, okay, cool, there's something here. So year over year it's developed and we've had different people helping out with leadership as they can. It's a completely all volunteer organization and we incorporated last year as a nonprofit. And so we're finally like at that stage where things are starting to become a lot more stable. And so we've brought on some senior leadership. Everyone's still on a volunteer basis, but that's how Veronica came up with it.
Yeah, I got invited actually last year through Caroline. We know each other socially, and she invited me to come and help out with the volunteer management side of things for personal reasons. Their volunteer manager last year needed some help and had stepped down. So I picked up that role about 2 weeks before the festival, which was fun. But ended up being actually, a lot of fun. People were amazing. The festival was really cool. I had never actually even attended before then. I'd heard about it, had friends that had showcased there, but had never actually been able to go. And ended up being a really positive experience. So moving into this year's festival and in between, Caroline and I also ran FIG Talks, which is more of a conference style for lecture series on what it takes to develop an independent game from more of a technical or business standpoint. And did that in January, and then moving into the festival this year, took on the role of the Director of Logistics. So that was sort of VP. Sorry, VP. VP.
Title.
The title's important. It's just the people that help support it.
Absolutely. So you kind of mentioned this already, Carolyn, but how did you get into kind of the scene of indie development and indie games? You mentioned you kind of had a background in the Boston area with that already, but could you elaborate a little bit more on that? And what drew you from whatever that is that you're starting into that festival place?
So I have been doing game design for 15 years, and I love games so much. So I moved to Boston for grad school in 2011 and started getting really, really involved with the game scene around here because games are a huge passion of mine. And that led into me organizing a bunch of different meetups in the area and conferences and things like that, and just getting very involved. And then, as things come up that I see an opportunity for us to throw an event that's going to make a difference and help out indies, I jump at it. So that festival was one of those efforts.
Makes sense.
I took it from more of a personal standpoint, I suppose. I have a lot of friends who are game makers and game designers, both AAA and indie, especially on the digital side, and then got involved in Boston's LARP community, which actually has quite a few board game designers and developers as well. So from a personal standpoint and wanting to see my friends succeed, I started getting involved in helping to run different programs or festivals that would support their needs and interests, because I wanted to see them be successful at what they were doing and lend my talents, which are not, technical or game design related.
Right, that's cool. So now that we know a little bit about a couple of the people behind the festival, let's move into kind of what I wanted to talk about in this interview and get an insight on. And normally we're talking to developers and we like to kind of eke some little tips out of them about development and their process. So from that standpoint, I'm wondering if you, as festival leaders and directors and founders, have some insight into how a game developer can successfully show at a festival like yours. Obviously, the Boston Festival of Indie Games is a different venue, a different beast than PAX or any of the other big shows, but I've seen there's other smaller shows like your guys's popping up, like the Connecticut FIG started up last year. It seems like it's something that's starting in the community. So with that in mind, there's going to be more independent developers looking to show it at shows like this. So I'm hoping that some of that insight might be helpful to game developers that are out there.
Sure. The first thing I would say is, when it comes to submission to the festival, polish your game as much as possible, get it to as ready of a state as possible before submitting. And also, don't be afraid to reach out to the judges if you have an update and say, hey, here's my latest build, or here's my latest box art, or whatever it is that's going to show that your game is going to be ready to be shown. That makes a difference when it comes to people's perceptions of how ready of a state your game is in. But when it comes to actually showing at the festival, practice your pitch. Really, really practice. And also, if you're demoing a game and your game doesn't have an obvious tutorial, learn how to demo your game. It's really, really important to be able to do a really quick explanation and have people be very, very clear about what the rules are and how to interact with you. So I'd say, get some friends together and just ask for their feedback again and again and again until you have things really nailed down. If you're a video game developer, then again, if you don't have a tutorial mode in your game, then you'll want to have a really neat script for how things work. I'd also say that something I've seen people do, which is really, really successful, is just print out a little instruction thing for the controls on your game, where it's A for jump and B for run and whatever it is that the controls are for your game, so that people have it, they can pick up a controller and you don't have to explain it to them. It's right there in front of them. That's also really helpful. And then for Boston FIG, we especially are a family-friendly festival, so practice talking to kids. It's a totally different audience, and they're so excited to play your game.
Oh, yeah.
I would say obviously, there's the logistics side of it.
Right.
As it relates to, I think, any festival, clear and open communication with the organizers is key. Be checking your email because we're sending a million updates. Be aware of deadlines. They're there for a reason. It's not because, we're not trying to be mean, grumpy trolls and say, you can't showcase because you missed the deadline. It's because that deadline was contingent on something else. We operate in a waterfall methodology where, that needs to be done, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. So we want you to be in the festival. But if you don't make the deadlines, then, it doesn't always work out. And then I would say, think about your visual presentation. Think about what your booth is going to look like to people walking by. It doesn't have to be big and flashy and expensive. It can be, a homemade poster board sign covered in glitter. It doesn't matter. The thing is, think about who's going to be to your left, to your right, and across the aisle from you. Is your table going to stand out to 1,000 people walking by that are stopping all around you?
That's great. I like that there's a little bit of logistical talk in here because that's not something that always gets brought up, and it's important. So kind of the flip side of this, of course, we always learn from mistakes almost as much as successes. So what are some common missteps that you've seen people make at festivals like this?
Not bringing a tablecloth. And then they have a totally naked table and they feel really embarrassed about it. And then there's no way to get a tablecloth last minute.
Right.
So bring a tablecloth. It's so easy. That's like one of the most common ones. Not bringing, like, people will get overtired and then they won't hydrate and drink water. It's so important. And bring throat lozenges because you're going to be talking all day.
Right.
And that's super important to be able to just take care of yourself. It's really important. Your game is going to survive, and you might get really sick though. So think about yourself a little bit.
Bring family and friends to help you sell your game. They probably know it better than anybody else around you. So I think the most common mistake that I've seen last year anyway were folks that didn't bring a team of people. A festival starts, 7 in the morning, you're there to set up and be ready to go. And you're there until 9 o'clock at night. Somewhere in there, you're probably going to want to go to the bathroom and get a bite to eat or at least a cup of coffee. Right. And if you can't leave your booth, or if you have nobody to take over for you while you're gone, nobody's playing your game or talking to you and they're just walking by. So bring a team of people, do shifts. You don't have to do it all on your own.
Great. That's awesome. Something I wasn't originally thinking about discussing, but I think could be really insightful at this point, would be with other smaller conventions coming up. What's some advice that you would have for people looking to start a kind of localized convention like the Boston FIG in their area? And how they might go about, creating that kind of community. Do you have any insight into that, and what some good tips might be for that?
Oh man, community building is one of my favorite pastimes, but it's also something that I have found. I don't know why this is, but the Boston area is somehow especially well oriented for the kind of community that we have and the kind of engagement we have. Not to say that other cities don't have great game dev communities, but something about the Boston scene is just so open and inclusive and welcoming. I'd say maybe one of the foundations of when you're trying to build a community and you're going to try to start these things is make sure you're starting from a place where you really are trying to contribute something to your community. That's one of the things that's really core to Boston FIG, is that we are not doing this because we want to put on a big commercial show. We're doing this because we deeply, deeply care about helping people succeed in creating games. And we want people to see the awesome games that people have created. So I think that that's pretty central to people know that. People understand when you're, selling out and when you're true to your community roots. So I think that's pretty critical to success in any community endeavor.
These are, whether it's FIG or Connecticut FIG or a school-run festival, these are all volunteer organizations. We're not in it to make profit. We do have to watch our costs, so right. I would definitely suggest that. Keep an accurate budget and keep track of what you spent last year versus this year kind of thing. But these are run by volunteers. So don't forget that, half of your community isn't able to play the game all day. They're the ones that are actually running the festival and, you know, helping to man the tables and info tables and passing out flyers and working registration and fostering that community, and building a sense of excitement in your volunteer crew is just as important as building a sense of excitement for the general public, because without your volunteers, it's not going to go anywhere and nobody's going to have any fun.
Good, excellent. So, with the FIG just around the corner, are there any submissions that have come in that have piqued your interest that people should be keeping an eye out for?
Ooh, this is where we took some suggestions here from our the heads of our curation. We had a couple on the tabletop side were Faulty Maps and Brass Empire. So those are some pretty cool ones to look out for. And then on the digital side, there's a game called Anamorphine and another game called Lightning. So those are some other ones to look out for.
I've got a couple of personal favorites that I'm going to be looking out for, although not in the showcase this year. De Solis was in the showcase and a winner last year. This year they're coming back as a sponsor, and they've made quite a few updates, especially to the visuals as well as the gameplay. So I'm curious to see how they've taken, you know, what they learned from the festival last year and applied it going forward. And then the other one I'm hoping to be able to sneak away to play for a little bit is called Scorcery. And it's a local multiplayer digital game. I like local co-op or multiplayer games. It's a sports-like game, but you use magic or curses to move the game all around. So it's extra nerdy, and I love it.
That's excellent. Well, Carolyn Murphy and Veronica Keddy, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time before the festival to let us know a little bit about what goes into the Boston FIG behind the scenes.
Our pleasure.
Thanks a lot for having us.